What is being open-minded and analytical? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is being open-minded and analytical? I mean, we always hear people talking about, oh, you should be more open-minded, or be open-minded, or some version of open-minded. And, some people use it as a compliment. Oh, that person is very open-minded. And some people, use it as a prodding sort of mild insult. Oh, you should be more open-minded. And for a long time, it's been considered a compliment, or a goal rather, for a person to be open-minded. Usually in the public discourse, when people discuss being open-minded, they don't talk about the second part, which I'm bringing into this philosophical discussion, which is being analytical. And I do think that causes some confusion. So we'll take each part, and then we'll kind of break down and see where we land, right? So the first part is being open-minded. What is being open-minded, right? So the general idea of being open-minded is that as a person, we have a mind, and we'll do that in another video. A mind briefly being just sort of the set of intellectual information that we have access to, and the way we've built the information in our intellectual sphere that creates our worldview, both conscious and unconscious. Generally speaking, that's our mind that we have access to. And so when we're discussing being open-minded, the idea is that in the systemic process of onboarding or intaking information into that sphere, into that intellectual sphere that goes into our mind, that we have very little, if not no filter as to the types of material information that we're bringing in initially. That's the idea of being open-minded. Just general intake into the intellectual sphere. And philosophically, there's a cutoff line where people decide that if a person has constructed their mind in such a way that their pre-existing views that are going on in their mind have set up filters and barriers for intake inside their mind, that's what's considered being closed-minded. Now, the line for where that is varies. It's debatable. I would say that, technically speaking, if a person is creating filters and obstacles to the intake of new information, which can change the point of view or change the analysis of the mind in a direction that is closer to clarity, closer to harmony with universal frequency, closer to getting to the truth, then that's the point at which they become closed-minded. Excuse me. Because as we move and grow in life, it doesn't matter what age we are, the information that's coming in is the information that is going to cause us to grow. It's going to cause us to process the information and cross-reference it in ways that we can't predict internally, that will change views of other things. So when we outright decline information, especially if we don't have a more mature mind with a lot of information already in it, but especially when we're still putting together a big picture of things, It can be highly detrimental to start blocking out information because we don't know what effects the information is going to have. We don't know what level of clarity the information is going to bring to us, whether it's on topics that we believe we already have existing analytical processes for, or other things that we're ignorant to, which, trust me, like the number of subjects that we're ignorant to far outnumber the number of subjects that we have any kind of operating knowledge on. So the first part of this is that just being open-minded just means clearing the way for information to come in with minimal or no pre-filtering or prejudice or like pre-thought, like discriminatory, like keeping it out pre-thought, right? Now, is that always possible? No, because like at some point when you're seeing things, you don't go, you have to have some operational filters to get through life, or everything would be bogging you down all the time. But in the philosophical realm, we need to be able to be open to taking it all in, because we don't know where that information is going to lead. Now, in terms of the second part, now in the popular culture, people say, "Oh, we'll be open-minded," right? And then you can't just be beholden to being open-minded, because then you'll just never think for yourself, and all the, none of the information gets triaged, none of it gets analyzed. Well, the second part of being open-minded is that you have to have an analytical thought process to go along with it. It's not that being open-minded means that you believe everything, or it doesn't mean that being open-minded means that you endorse every single thing that comes in. Because for as much information as you can get that can come in, that can be growth inducing or enlightening or spot on true for whatever subject it happens to be that on that information, you can also it's equally likely that you get, misinformation, whether it's malevolent or not, doesn't matter, just like stuff that's wrong, misformed ideologies, incorrect perspectives on things, like incorrect in the sense that they're just manipulated and constructed from the ground up for personal or group agendas that have nothing to do with clarity or truth or any of that. Like nothing philosophical, like all personal, political, monetary, material manipulation, agenda, gaming, whatever, personal propaganda, group propaganda. There's a whole bucket of information like that has no honor in it, basically, right? And then on the other hand, you have just actual information. And it doesn't mean that actual information or perspectives, ideologies, or whatever can't be true or mainly aligned with clarity. But it does mean that we have to come up with an analytical internal process to discern that. And it doesn't do a person any good to try to make all the information that's coming in fit into the pre-existing model that we have internally. Because then you just go around with a very sharp focus. Even if you think you have like a very wide focus, you'll go around with a very narrow focus. And your senses they'll cease to seek out just truthful information. They'll be realigned to seek out information that feeds your confirmation bias. And that's really what it comes down to, is if you can keep an open mind as you go through life, then you can absorb new things, you can construct yourself properly. Personally, I think that's how we get the most out of life. If life is like an information buffet, right? It's this experience with essentially choose your own adventure and all these different experiences that you can get into. Keeping in mind that we are vibratory beings, and the nature of the experience is vibrations, and that we're interacting with vibrations and absorbing it for perspectives. At the end of the day, like everything turns into a perspective. Everything turns into an experience for us, right? It doesn't matter the nature of the experience. At the end of it, it all turns into some mental concept, like a memory of an experience that we have, and our ability to sort of process it into some way where we see and experience some sort of coherent meaning out of the experiences. And however we do that is up to us. You know, whatever baseline analysis that and concept and perception that we're working with in relation to the experiences of life that we're having, that's dealer's choice. So the only way that we can really do a disservice to ourselves in that from that perspective is that we limit the intake based on immature analytics and go, oh well, you know, I've seen enough of life, like I know which information to take in. Like that, we do ourselves a disservice because some information that appears good ends up being bad. Some information that appears bad ends up being good, right? Just because something challenges the way that we're thinking or challenges our worldview, oftentimes that's the most necessary information we need. Because if it's information we already have a handle on, we already have a handle on it, and that's fine. And so if you know that something to a high degree of certainty is true, then it's fine if more information comes in to support it, but it's not necessarily necessary. So in fact, being open-minded ends up kind of being an ability to scan the reality for information that you were just unaware of prior to, and that is where the chief utility of being open-minded comes into. Information that you don't know what to do with, information that you haven't been exposed to before, like experiences. I say information, but any kind of reality experience. It can be something as deep as like a love affair. It can be something as academic as a book you've never read before, or anything in between. You know, it could be a meditation. It could be a news report. It doesn't really matter. The nature of the information doesn't matter. Information is just what everything sort of gets distilled down to. So in that regard, having an open mind is the greatest divining tool that you can have, because you can only truly have an open mind. Well, I won't say only, but I feel like the best way to have an open mind is to be secure in your analytical process, to know that internally you can process your interaction with life regardless of whether you like the outcome or not. Because usually people who start to narrow their minds do so typically because they're trying to alter their outcome of what they're discerning from reality, and thus living in delusion, because they'll just cherry pick information that keeps them living in the version of reality that they've constructed internally, which isn't necessarily supported by reality because it's not true. And if you get outside of a certain degree of clarity of working within the truthful stream of things in the reality, then you start living in delusion. And narrowing one's mind can have this weird effect of only using your mind to confirm your delusion and not live in reality. But then you also think that like you're doing really well, because then some people also, once they get to that stage, they become very vocal about how everybody should have an open mind. I mean, they're projecting, but then they'll tell people, oh, you should have an open mind. They'll even get like very militant about it to keep people from letting them know that in fact they have actually narrowed their mind and they no longer can take in broader realities for processing, which lead to the truth. So in order to have an open, like a truly open mind, it needs to come from really one of two places. One, if you're just comprising your worldview, it comes from a place of exploration and curiosity and honesty and sincerity and authenticity, of knowing that you're in the process of creating your internal processing system for life, and that you know that you need to expose yourself to everything because you don't know what's going on, and that you're willing to be wrong or right about certain things, but you just want to find out how to figure out how to be right or wrong about things. And it's all right, and you're going to go where it leads you, and you're going to go where it takes you. And there's a certain amount of innocence and naivete and self-awareness and humility and honesty that accompany that type of open-mindedness. And then there's the open-mindedness where once you do have your analytics and you have a decent degree of certainty with your navigation into the unknown, of taking in information from the reality and processing it properly to a point where it's not just you, but you have outside counsel, both the reality and other people and other metrics, letting you know that you're getting on track with seeing things for what they are. That's a deep security. Like then you're a secure person internally, because people can tell you things and you don't have to reject them. You can listen to it and then analyze it and then determine that it's, it's either true or not true, but it doesn't push you up in arms, and it doesn't make you shut down your mind, and it doesn't make you have negative thoughts about people, because you can see it for what it is. If in this scenario, if you have a proper, secure, analytical internal process, and somebody comes up to you and they're an ideologue, and they have a very narrow mind about a subject, and they're very passionate, because usually ideologues are, because they don't have full spectrum emotions to work with. They don't have, they can't be chill about everything, because they typically put all their eggs in one basket. And if that person comes to you and they tell you that they have put all their eggs in one basket, and they really need you to think like they think and narrow your mind, and they give you a lot of good reasons, um, you can comfortably sit there and see what's going on and go, okay, cool. This person's gotten to this point, and I'm listening to it. And it doesn't even mean their information is wrong. It doesn't even necessarily mean that their analytics are wrong. It's just the level of the focus they have on it in relation to the reality itself can be analyzed. Like, oh, is this in balance with the rest of the reality that's going on? Is this like this and this and this? And when one views it from that perspective in a secure way, then the analysis of the process becomes even more, everything basically becomes enlightening. To be able to handle, the good with the bad, the true with the untrue, the sincere with the insincere, to be able to handle just the polarity of it, the yin yang, in the present moment, knowing that everything has a bit of both. You'll get to moments of balance, perfection, but generally speaking, everything's got a bit of the both, trying to balance itself out. That seems to be one of the internal motivating mechanisms for life. And so being open-minded ends up being its own reward in that way, and that ends up being a great way to use the brain. And they say, whatever, we use a low percentage of the brain, which I don't think that's correct, but I think one of the great ways to use a fuller brain, if that's a phrase, is that leaving on open mode, open with analytics as the second phase. Intake a bunch, and then analyze it. Now, when I say that, I don't mean, I'm not encouraging you to go out and be dumb and just put a bunch of junk in your mind. But there should be a period where you put a bunch of junk in your mind so you know what junk is. But it's not that you go out and go out on a crusade against junk. It's just that when it comes in, you know what it is, and you know how to deal with it, and you know where it goes in your ecosystem, your internal ecosystem. So what is being open-minded, and what is an analytical process? I think that's pretty good coverage on that. So, and as far as being open-minded, of course, I think philosophy is one of the best ways in human history to open your mind safely and without substance. And there are for sure lots of other ways to open your mind and keep it open. I think discussions, conversations are one of the best ways. There's all sorts of breathing exercises, all sorts of meditative exercises. Just general socializing, I think, helps. And of course, there's shamanic means. So all kinds of things. So anyway, hope you enjoyed your time here at Philosopher's Corner, and I hope you have a good day, an open-minded, analytical day.